All right, welcome back. Let's demonstrate some code splitting and how it works in this video. Now, right over here, I just created a Create React App project. So I just simply ran Create React App code splitting. This is just the default project that we get out of the box. If I do npm start, you'll see that there's nothing special, just nice and simple Create React App. Perfect. To get started with our code splitting, first of all, I'm going to stop this. That's clear here. And I'm just going to remove everything in here other than the header. And ideally, we would want to have perhaps 3 buttons or 3 places that we can click to give us a new page. We'll have a page 1 component. We'll have a page 2 component, and then finally a page 3 component. But obviously we have to create these components first. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to create a new folder, call it components. And within here, we'll just create the page 1 JavaScript file, page 2 JavaScript file, and then finally the page 3 JavaScript file. Now within these pages, we'll just import React from React, which is pretty standard. But you know what? Let's also grab the logo that we have up here as well, the React logo. I'm going to import that as well. And because we're in the components folder right now and the logo lives in the source folder, we'll have to do ... and actually we want the components folder to be inside of the source folder here, not outside. So let's just move that. We'll put it inside of the source folder. Perfect. Now within this page, it's going to be a stateless function. So we'll call it const page 1 is going to equal, it won't have any props that we'll receive for now. And within here, we could do the return, or if we're just returning a simple component, I can just leave it the way it is now and say div. We'll give it a class name of app, just so we get the same class name that we had before. And you know what? We'll just copy the header as well. So this page 1 is going to have the header. And we'll close off the div. But also within here, we want to have 2 buttons. So the first button will have an onClick event. And for now, it's just going to be empty. And let's say that inside of this button, it will have the text of page 2. So when we click on this button, it's going to take us to page 2. And we can do the same for page 3. So let's just go ahead and save that. The last thing we want to do is if we go to app.js, well, we still have page 2 and page 3, but ideally we have some sort of routing. So we're going to display page 1, page 2, and page 3, but not at the same time. Based on the route, we want to render only page 1 if we're on page 1, only page 2 if we're on page 2, and only page 3 if we're on page 3. So let's just create a simple routing logic here. We can first start off by creating a state. Now we do that by having a constructor. If you remember, we have to call super, so we can use the this keyword. And within here, we'll say this.state equals route. And the default route when this app gets initialized will just be page 1. And based on where we click, remember in page 1 how we have 2 buttons that will have some sort of an event that if we click on page 2, it's going to take us to page 2. If we click on page 3, it's going to take us to page 3. So let's create an event. We'll call it on route change. And this on route change, let's fix that spelling, is going to have the this.onRouteChange method that we're going to create right now in the app. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll say on route change. And this on route change is going to receive the parameter route. And I'm using arrow functions here so we don't have to bind in the constructor. Otherwise, we had to use .bind on route change if we didn't do the arrow function. But I like this way. I think it looks cleaner. Now, within here, we can simply say this dot set state to have the route equals to whatever the route is. So we can actually just shorthand use this, but it's more descriptive, so I like this method better. So we know what's going on. So now we're passing the on route change to the page 1 component. All right, so by that logic, we can just copy and paste to page 2 and page 3 again, the same thing. And all we're doing is anytime we click, we update the route to whatever route we requested. Let's go back, or let's save that and go to page 1. Page 1 now is going to receive the on route change prop. And this on route change, and I'm using destructuring here, so I don't have to do props.onRouteChange. I can just say on route change. We'll have a function that gets run, and this on route change is going to send the route page 2 because we're going to page 2. Let me make that a little bit smaller so you can see. And again, we're going to do the same thing to page 3. This time clicking on page 3. And then finally, we can just export default page 1. And I'm going to go ahead and just copy all of this because our pages are pretty much going to look the same, except for the fact that the names will be different. So we'll have page 3. And for the on-click, instead of page 2 and 3, we'll have page 1, page 2, page 2, page 1. We'll save that. And then same with page 2. We'll rename this to page 2 component that has access to page 1 and page 3. All right. The very last part is obviously we want to import these components. So I'm going to say import page 1 from, or is just component or components. Make sure we get that right. Page 1. And then finally copying the rest over here to make sure we match page 2, page 3, page 2, page 3. I'm going to just save this and run npm start, see if we get any errors. All right, we have quite an ugly web page with our components rendering, but it looks like it's working. We have the pages running, but we obviously don't want to display all of them at the same time. We want to have some sort of routing logic. And the default should be page 1 because remember our route is currently page 1. And this is pretty easy to do. We no longer need the header because the header and also the app are all within these components. So let's just remove this and add the logic in here. We're going to say if this.state.route equals page 1. Then we return page 1 over here. Else, if we have the route as page 2, then we can just render page 2. And I'm sure there's cleaner ways of doing this right now, but for this demonstration purposes, this will do just fine. Nice, simple routing logic. Page 3, we finally return that right over here. All right, let's give it a go. Saving it. Logo is defined by never used because we don't use it on the main page anymore. Let's save. Go back. All right. Looks like we have everything running. Let's see if I click page 2. This changes to page 1. Page 3. This changes to page 2. So we're changing pages right now, but this is kind of hard to tell. So let's add some CSS to make it look better. And I actually have some CSS styles already that we can use because, well, we're not learning CSS right now. I have a button class, nothing too crazy, just some border making it bigger. And we also have a disabled class. So that now we can add a disabled class to our buttons to see which one we're actually clicking on. So let me save that. And this time around, I'm going to just have a button that has a class name, disabled, and it's not going to do anything. It'll just have the page 1. Because we're currently on page 1, we just want the page 2 and page 3 button to be active. And I'm going to save and do the same for all the other ones as well. We'll say page 2, because we're on page 2 is disabled. And then finally for page 3, we'll have that one disabled as well. All right, let's see if that looks better. Let's go back. All right, so we're on page 1. You can see how good my CSS skills are. This looks very beautiful. And if we click on page 2, we go to page 2. If we go to page 3, we go to page 3. Very cool. All right, so we did all that work. That's amazing, but where is this code splitting? Well, this is the app that we're gonna use code splitting on. And because right now, if I open up the tab, the developer tools, and go to network, and I just click refresh, I see that I get the bundle.js. Ignore all this other stuff. This is just extra stuff that comes with my Chrome plugins and also Create React app. But the one we're interested in is the bundle.js. This is where we have our components. And you see this is the one that takes the longest time to load. Now, this bundle.js is just one single file. And if I click on page 2, nothing happens because all the JavaScript that we need has already been loaded in bundle.js. With code splitting now, we're going to be able to actually load up files each time we click on a page because we haven't loaded that yet. And this way, we can make this bundle.js that's 354 kilobytes right now a lot smaller. I know I'm building up the suspense, but in the next video, we're going to make this have code splitting. And it's quite easy. So I'll see you in that one. Bye-bye.